everyone. This is a thought for the day. And this thought for the day comes from this book, The Call to Brilliance. This is an amazing story about parents and children. What are we doing with our children? So I'm reading from chapter 12, which is titled, Where's the Instruction Manual for This Kid? And that's on page 92. In a restaurant, Jenny, my cousin's 2-year-old daughter, under my watchful eye, threw the bowl with cereal and milk back over her head and hit a passing waiter. The waiter dropped his tray and frightened Stephen, Resa's son, who was then 3 months old. Stephen wouldn't stop howling even though the commotion stopped. I felt helpless. The other diners were quick to comment, so we left and I retreated back to the comfort and security of our living room, unwilling to negotiate the grown-up world too soon again with a baby. 3 more months passed. I had much to learn. By the time Stephen was 6 months old, my husband noticed a serious deficit in our parenting. The issue? Socialization. Mine. Leaning over my shoulder as I changed another poopy diaper, he whispered, "Maybe you need to get yourself out of the house on a regular basis before it's too late." So taking Dennis's advice, I found myself in a Mommy and Me class. The group was held in a multi-purpose room. The tables and chairs were pushed to the side. Lying on blankets in a circle on the floor were 18 contented babies. The women were all socializing, and trying to break into that circle was like crashing into a wagon train encampment. There was just no room for strangers. So I started a second circle of 1 plus baby. I hoped to make friends anyway. I was naive. Instead, I found everyone was an expert with an opinion. The group formed its own little self-supporting consensus. The woman on her 5th baby, the lady with newborn twins, the visiting grandparents who hadn't seen a baby in 30 years, all of them. Even the mother, whose child was only 2 months older than mine, had something critical to say. Each had heavy emotional issues about parenting. What to feed a baby first, when to wean and potty train, whether or not to use a pacifier. The family bed, quote unquote, raised the ire of almost everyone. Should parents allow a child to sleep with them? We did. We never thought twice about it, nor did we care what anyone else thought. They never did. Never. There was zero tolerance for deviation. But this is part of our educational culture. In school, we learn that different means wrong. From the time we are little, we are taught to do the same things in the same way at the same time as everyone else. We learn to walk in a line and sit in a row. Our school system is geared toward keeping us in step. Creativity, it's discouraged. It is too unpredictable. Individuality is frowned upon, and our relationships follow suit. Teachers use emotional blackmail to get us to color between the lines. We learn to apply the same tactics to our relationships. We judge other people as we were judged, and we respond with the same disdain our teachers did. A step out of line is intolerable, and an emotional reaction swiftly follows. Joseph Chilton Pearce writes, "When we accuse or judge another, it has the same effect on us as being judged ourselves. Any judgment we make, no matter of whom, registers in the heart as a disruption of relationship. And the heart dutifully responds on behalf of our defense, shifting neural, hormonal, and electromagnetic systems from relational to defensive. Our sensory system reflects those shifts in its source material, and the environment we experience changes accordingly. Although perceived as the natural phenomena of our world to which we respond as usual. Creator and created are giving rise to each other. We are judged as we have judged." That's from The Biology of Transcendence by Joseph Chilton Pearce. And then Resa goes on, "These relationships do not nurture love and trust. These are relationships that turn the innovators of tomorrow, the healers, the scientists, the artists, the explorers, into either passive followers or those who rise to the top by merciless attacks on others. We do what we know. And these women were no exception. They personified judgment and disdain, which they used on each other and taught to their children." Joseph Chilton Pearce explains, "We have been restrained and judged since birth, and we automatically judge others, restrain them if possible, and we teach our children to do the same." That's also from The Biology of Transcendence by Pearce. So Resa says, "Stephen and I stayed in the class anyway. The months passed. Each week, the other parents and I sat in that circle, now with our toddlers on our laps. Every mother was so proud, working with her child, clapping to the beat of the music, jingling those bells and tambourines, and looking and listening to the big picture storybook. But Stephen was no longer interested in looking at a book. By the time Stephen was walking, he was pure kinetic motion. He would not sit during circle time. And of course, there was that evil eye from that group of moms who formed their own consensus. They made it perfectly clear that a child who did not sit still was destined to unruliness, which is, as everybody knows, something akin to criminal activity. The implicit emotional deductions were outrageous. In spite of my best efforts, Stephen never remained in my lap. He squirmed. He wriggled out of my loving grasp like a wrestler out of a half Nelson. He couldn't care less about jingling bells, and he had no interest in rowing his boat gently down the stream. He was off and running over to the windows, tugging on the pull cords, listening to the clatter as each blind slat crashed into the next. Then he was over at the workbench, examining every tool, twisting, turning, pushing, pulling, and prodding whatever he could find. Then he was under the table, digging up unlimited wads of used bubble gum, pieces of lint, dead bugs, and other treasures. Under the carpet, behind the furniture, around the corner, wherever he went, I was mortified. When I tried to bring him back to the group, he cried, struggled, and screamed. We gently fought our way through every circle time. Finally, the teacher quietly pulled me aside. I thought she was going to ask us to leave, but instead she said, "Why don't you just let him explore? It seems to be what he needs." That was a whole new idea for me. Dr. Glasser explains, quote, "Our ability to start to satisfy our needs before we even know what we are doing or why we are doing it is one of nature's strokes of genius," end quote. And that's from Books or Schools Without Failure. And Stephen was busy satisfying his needs. He was being drawn towards something I did not yet understand. He was moving toward becoming uniquely Stephen. Dr. Margaret Wheatley writes, quote, "Life moves toward wholeness. It seeks coherence. Every self makes sense. It creates a world and an identity that feels coherent to itself. From infinite possibilities, it chooses what to notice and how to respond. All living beings create themselves by this sense-making process of perception and response. As we look at any living being, we are observing its particular coherence, the logic it has used to create itself," end quote. So, as you go through the day, make a call to your own brilliance. What do you keep being drawn to investigate, to explore, to play with, to notice, to join, to become part of? What is that? What is that draw? What is that pull? Give yourself permission to honor that and let yourself begin to follow that urge. See where it takes you. You know where it's going to take you? It's going to take you to you, the real you. Think about that as you go through the day and make a wonderful day.